Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the kindergarten entry assessment and the 10 developmentally appropriate practices. We'll be unpacking the construct progressions while looking at health and physical today. For more information on other construct progressions, please visit our YouTube page where you will see additional PowerPoint presentations, or you can visit us at southeast.weebly. The first developmentally appropriate practice that we're going to discuss is acknowledging. Acknowledging what students know and are able to do is critical to planning effective differentiated instruction. Our intent with the kindergarten entry assessment is that it will be a tool that will help you in better understanding what it is that your students are able to do and where it is they need to go next. It is important to consider students' conceptual knowledge as it relates to healthy behaviors. Developing this knowledge is important to reducing health risks. Grip manipulation, crossing the midline, and hand dominance are important to students' academic success. The next practice is developing. Developing hand dominance is important to developing the physical skills necessary to multitasking. Hand dominance is important to developing learned automatic movements such as handwriting and cutting. Once movement is automatized, the brain is free to focus on other cognitive tasks. Students' focus becomes more on their thinking versus on the skill the task requires. Next, we will talk about encouraging. Encouraging development of hand strength through intentional physical development is important to students' academic success. In this picture, you can see tweezers and little ladybugs, and the students are being asked to use those tweezers to pick up the ladybugs and put them in another container. This helps develop their fine motor skills. Developing fine motor skills through intentional lesson planning fosters strengthening of fine motor skills with hands and fingers. Practice is important to manipulate scissors, pencils, tweezers. Motor strength impacts students' ability to open and close containers, zip, tie shoes, and ultimately influences their grip and manipulation with writing or drawing instruments. Some ideas to support the development of hand dominance. You can present objects at the midline, belly button, and desktop levels. This allows students to use their preferred hand to grasp and manipulate, and reinforces them to utilize their dominant hand. Object counting with pincher grasp. Have students pick up pennies, buttons, chips, or other objects that require a pincher grasp and place objects into a container while counting. This allows us to observe in multiple areas. Object counting with household tools such as tweezers, tongs, or clothespins. Have students pick up objects and move to another location while counting out loud. These can be objects such as pom-poms, which are large enough for them to visually discriminate and be able to utilize their fine motor skills to grab. Students can play musical instruments that require one hand to be the stabilizer and the other hand can be used to play the instrument. An example of this would be the xylophone, where the student must hold with one hand and use the other hand to play. In addition, tracing letter stencils helps develop students' skills. While one hand traces, the other hand must stabilize the template. Letter recognition. Provide a student with a page of alphabet letter stickers. Then ask the students to remove the letter stickers that you request. The next practice we're going to look at is providing student feedback, as well as eliciting student feedback These are important to the student's health and physical development, as well as informing instructional next steps. Imagine the impact on student success with little to no focus on hand dominance, grip and manipulation, and crossing the midline. It would impact a student's current and future academic and life endeavors. There are many instructional processes that can be embedded into the instructional day to develop these critical skills. Some of them were shown in the previous slides. Modeling and demonstrating is the next practice we're going to talk about. Modeling and demonstrating pencil grip and manipulation is important to the writing process. Providing guidance to children showing signs of fatigue of the hand and inconvenience of grip should be offered options. Developing mobility and stability through modeled and demonstrated grip and manipulation. These observable and actionable opportunities can support lessened pressure in students' grip of various utensils, such as pencils, pens, and art brushes. Model for students how the fingertips meet in a relaxed pose. Ask the child to mimic the grip. You may even support students by aiding them in shaping their fingers around the writing or drawing instrument. Providing modeling and feedback while the child is engaged in the daily embedded writing process or shortly after is as important to influencing a child's pencil grip. This is based on research, and the link is shown below. The next practice we're going to talk about is creating or adding challenge. Motor and cognitive functions tend to follow a similar timeline, with intensified development between the ages of 5 and 10, which is why it's so important for us to be purposeful in focusing on our fine motor development and crossing the midline within the classroom. This is based on research and is cited within our NCDPI Construct Progression book. Fine motor. From tracing to writing independently, we have to focus on how we get students there. Challenge is determined by finding where the students are and where they will go next on the progressions, from using the whole arm to write to stabilizing the arm. Things such as providing tweezers to use to grab and count small materials allows students to work on developing motor skills while increasing the challenge for them. Crossing the midline. For some students, crossing the midline is a challenge. This impacts the ability to use buttons, perform in PE, write, and read. Have students touch the opposite toe with the opposite hand. Have students sit back to back with another student and pass a ball to the person behind them by reaching across their body and handing it behind them to the other student. They will then have to reach across the other side of their body to get the ball back from the student that is sitting back to that with them. Eventually, getting to writing and cutting crossing the midline, which are not forced crossing activities. Ask questions. For fine motor, ask students which hand feels more comfortable when you are writing. How else could you hold the scissors? How else could you hold this pencil? For crossing the midline, you could ask students, can you keep the paper in one place as you are drawing? Can you keep your body facing forward? Asking these questions allows you to observe student skill without telling students what they need to be doing. By doing this, we increase the students' awareness of what they are doing and also allow them to self-correct. We need to be careful when working on hand dominance that we don't tell students which hand you feel is their dominant hand. Give assistance. For fine motor, model the appropriate way to hold scissors or a pencil. If this is not enough support, you may need to provide hand-over-hand support in order to help them realize what an appropriate grip feels like. Pencil grips and training scissors are an additional way of providing assistance. For crossing the midline, you could create activities with student skills in mind. Communicate with specials teachers such as PE and art to help support building these skills and collecting evidence of student skill. Next, I'm going to show you a video from understood.org, which provides some examples of ways that we can work to build student fine motor skills. As you can see from the video, some of the activities would also require crossing of the midline in order to appropriately complete. The next practice we're going to talk about is provide information. For fine motor, share details with parents about student strengths and needs for fine motor development. Work with parents to understand how to support development of fine motor skills within the home. Many of the materials that we use within the classroom to develop fine motor skills can also be found within the home, such as clothespins and tweezers, pennies, and small materials that you can use the tweezers or clothespins to help manipulate. Crossing the midline. Because of the ties with this area and reading, ensure you communicate with parents regarding student skill and why it is important to develop this skill. Utilize your resources. OTs are a great source of information for these areas and can provide great strategies for use within the classroom. Here's an example of a parent report for health and physical development. It's a great way to help communicate with parents about where a student's skill is and where they are heading next. For crossing the midline, you can see that at A, it isolates movement to one side of the midline, the invisible line running from our head to our toes, dividing the body into left and right halves. Some parents may not be aware of what the midline is. At B, the student begins to cross the midline in some situations. And at C, the student consistently crosses the midline. For grip and manipulation, A, uses a fisted grip or palmar grasp to reach, manipulate, or hold items with the whole arm movement. B, uses thumb and fingers to manipulate objects with whole arm movement and increase stability from the shoulder. As you can see, as we move along the progression and we're working with parents to help understand where students are, at E, hand movements are primarily controlled by actions from the wrist and fingers. Ideally, that's where we want our students to be. Looking at hand dominance, uses no established dominance for lead dominant hand. Switching still continues. B, uses established dominant hand. C, performs actions involving mirrored movements with opposing hand. And at D, manipulates with dominant hand with assistance from the other hand. Helping parents understand where a child is and where they're headed is very important because many of these skills can be practiced within the home, but we need to help support parents in knowing what it is they can do to develop those skills in partnership with what we're doing in the classroom. Next is give directions. For fine motor, this may include hand-over-hand support and providing scaffolds for students. We need to create activities that purposefully incorporate fine motor skills in the classroom and provide explicit instruction in how to accomplish these tasks. We cannot assume that all students are at the same place and that all students will have the same understanding of utilization of the fine motor skills. Asking students if they can hold a piece of paper still while they are labeling on both sides of the paper is an important piece of direction for students, as they may begin to start moving the paper if we don't explain that our goal is to hold it steady. Crossing the midline. Specifically design activities that require the crossing of the midline and give specific directions on how to accomplish these tasks. Allow the children to spread shaving cream, then trace letters in it. This allows them to cross the midline, but also work on their fine motor skills. Specific directions on how to throw a ball in PE. We can't assume that all students will know how to do this. If we provide specific direction and specific support, we can hope that the students will be more successful.